Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook, a podcast for entrepreneurs in the business of sports. Your hosts, Dave Kozak and Steve Cook, are business owners, successful entrepreneurs, sports enthusiasts, avid readers, and longtime friends. For years, they've read every business book on the market and built successful companies with what they've learned. This podcast will give you the critical takeaways in just 15 minutes a week. It's a quick and easy playbook for building a winning sports business. And now, here are your hosts, Dave and Steve.
Thank you for listening. Visit ParadigmPlaybook.com to discover how we can support you and your business. Good morning, afternoon, night, whatever time of day it is.
Yeah, right now it's so raining where we are, you can't tell whether it's morning or afternoon. So we're going to bring some sunshine to you.
And this is Paradigm Playbook. So I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside my co-host, Mr. Steve Cook.
Morning, David. Let's go.
So we thought we would do a little, like take it back a little bit and talk about individual skills that sort of pay dividends for life. And is, in my opinion, especially important for the entrepreneur to possess, or at least to understand the necessity of these skills and to work towards mastery in skills, right?
And I was writing a chapter for the book on why some businesses fail, and I think it's sometimes because the owner-founder doesn't grow as the business scales, and so it's possible that your own business can pass you by. So I think it's important that the term that we're using is that you grow while you build, and you keep keeping yourself a step ahead of your business. Even if it's only a step, it's still good.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's an incredible point, because you're familiar with the Peter Principle?
Oh, yeah.
You rise to your highest level of incompetence. And what a true entrepreneur does is never has the plateau, because they're always learning something new. That the whole genesis behind this podcast, this company or consulting, is constant lifetime growth. And you have to, there's one thing that I think is incredibly useful as a tool for life, is to never let your ego get in the way. If you can put your ego aside, you can make great inroads. And I think the simplest way to put your ego aside is to understand that you don't know, right? You don't know. And there's always a book or a smarter person or the person at another table that can teach you or show you, or where you can find the answer. And you have to be resolved to go look for it. But the first thing is to understand that, well, you may have an opinion, you may have an idea, you don't necessarily know. So dig in.
You also have to make time and space for learning.
Agreed.
Which I think sometimes, and one of the failures we see is a lack of momentum. And sometimes you have owners that get so involved in the business, it's tiring. It really is. And all of a sudden, you haven't grown, you haven't had a new program, you haven't changed anything, you haven't reviewed your pricing. You don't know where you are because you're so involved in running the business. So I think the idea of making space to learn and to grow is important.
Without question.
So what skills? What skills are we building?
I think number one is the ability to learn how to learn.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I guess every book that we hit on touches that a little bit.
Yep.
And learning what you don't know. And maybe Carol DeWitt was the best at it, is just saying that there's a process that you go through listening. Daniel Pink also does a lot on this, knowing how your brain works and how you're going to gather that information. And it takes repetition and application to get permanent with the learning. So I think if you're not repeating it and you're not talking to yourself, or you're not challenging it, you're not learning. So that process, I guess it's learning, repeating, and then listening to the feedback all goes together. And that's how you're going to learn something that if you're not getting the feedback, you may only superficially learn something, but it's, one of the things they say is you don't learn something until you teach it. So
or you don't master it until you're able to teach it.
Yeah, right.
There was a great business coach I had early in my career. His name was Mark LeBlanc, and he had his phrase of fame was, it's what you do every day that's more important than what you do once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that always stuck with me. And I think learning is in that. You have to do it every day. You have to constantly be, whether it's 15 minutes, whether it's, an hour, whatever you can put aside, but you have to do it religiously because that's what makes the difference. We're in the college planning space, and a lot of what we have to teach families about the college decision is when you graduate from college, your formal education is winding down, but your true education is just beginning. And so if you graduate college with the ability to think and learn, and that's the mentality you take into the professional world, you'll be very successful. And I think that's an entrepreneurial trait that just has to exist.
I think there's a lot of people that'll tell you, say, what was your major in college? And they'll say, yeah, I was in dentistry. And, and here I am, running a concrete business. So, it's like, it doesn't always stick to it, but you do learn. If you learn that learning process, then it carries over to whatever you're doing. So I think great point. The other thing, Dave, is that the learning process. So we've talked a lot about atomic habits and keystone habits and all that. So the skill of actually building a habit is critical as part of your learning program, because you can, learn everything in the world. You can learn all the accounting practices you want to know, but if you're not applying them on a regular basis, or even reading the books on a regular basis, you can get wrapped up. And the more you listen to your accountant saying, "Hey, we're fine," and you don't understand it, then you're not really learning it because you're not questioning it.
Yeah, and I think that's also a point where discipline comes in too, right? Because habits and discipline,
Yeah, I get it.
Which one's more important? Which one is required? Does discipline create habit? Does habit create discipline? Like, is it a self-fulfilling thing? Listen, not everything I do every day is enjoyable, right? The discipline to do it is what persists. So, all right, let's move on to another skill that'll sort of pay dividends over life. I think this is one that gets hard for some people, because I think it brings a vulnerability in, which is to ask for help. You got to know how to ask for help and who to ask for help from, right? In business.
And that starts with before you go into business. As we're working with people that are thinking about opening new businesses, especially in sports, knowing what you don't know is important, because then you know who to ask, where to go out and get that information, so that you have a working knowledge of all the sectors of business before you go into it. If you don't know what the tax laws are, or what different types of corporations there are, or how you pay taxes, or what's deductible, what's not, what you can, it's easy to go into business and kind of take a cue off the people. It's like, he's got, his family all has cars, they're all deductible. Well, let's figure out what's legal, what's not, and let's go into it the right way.
For sure.
So I agree.
So again, to ask for help, and it's not, sometimes it's personal help, sometimes it's business help, sometimes it's consulting help, sometimes it's workload help. Like, just asking for help is important. And, a huge step in that, again, setting the ego aside, is understanding that you need help, right? There's a lot of Superman syndrome in the entrepreneurial world, which is, I can take it all on. And that is the fastest way to reach that Peter principle, right?
Yeah, the application of that I found in the corporate world. Anybody from my corporate world listening to this, or can I say this?
I think you can say it.
Okay.
Hey.
So the problem we had in the corporate world, and you have management, you have middle management, and you have senior managers. And senior managers, it's just like, in my life, it was real. It was upstairs. The C-suite was actually up a level, so it was up there. But the middle managers had this thing where they felt like they could ask for help from above, but not from below.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is, and let's put this in a small business. So and we'll go back to Michael Gerber and the E-Myth. You're in a small business and you have a founder, you have a manager, and you have technicians. And if you're not getting the information from the technician, then you maybe don't know how to manage the business. And if you don't get the information from the manager, you don't know how to envision the next step of your business. So I think it's the ability to reach up, reach down, and reach sideways to get help, and not just superficially say, okay, we've got them involved, but you really have to listen.
Absolutely.
And I think listening is something else that is a skill in itself. I wish I was better at it. Those of us that like to talk are notoriously poor listeners. Don't ask my wife about that, but
yeah, listening is probably the most important skill that you can have, because you can tell an awful lot by what comes out of other people's mouths, and you can understand a scenario much better when you have that sort of, let me listen and digest and process before I speak. And Steve, I think that's one thing that has led to my success over time. I wasn't always a great listener. I was always a great talker.
Mm-hmm.
I really dug in early in my career to learn how to listen, and to listen for the right things, and to get a more thorough picture before acting. And that has served me very well. So listening is a huge deal for sure.
And that's how you build a team too. So in your case, that's how you built partners and a lot of people working on your team, because you took the time to listen to them. So you don't have to go through the, try and fail process of bringing people on board. You know more about them because you've listened to them, and then you can do so. But I don't think it's always as easy as you think.
It is not. It is certainly not.
It changes the speed of work, and sometimes you slow down. I kind of think this was Simon Sinek's point to his book, Leaders Eat Last. Whether you eat last or you speak last. I mean, I remember he used to say, try going into a meeting and being the last one to speak.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, okay, here's what I think. We're going to do this. I think we have to do this. Okay, what do y'all think? That's different than letting everyone talk, gathering that information, and then saying, based on what everyone said, I think we ought to go this way. And in the sports business, the one of the real values we have is we have generally a staff of coaches that are very, very knowledgeable and very outgoing. So reaching to them to answer questions about the business is not only smart, it's very logical. It's like the people working in the space will know best about how to organize that space.
Yeah. I mean, I got back from a week and a half vacation with the family this morning, and first thing I did was went to my number 2 and said, "Hey, what's going on? Give me the wrap. Tell me." And it wasn't all positive news, that's for sure. So
and they said, "What? You're back?"
Yeah,
that's not positive.
They're like, "Where you been? Need you." So, but the point is, you have to listen, and you can learn the pains if you keep your finger on the pulse or ear to the ground, however you want to say it. I think another life skill that translates very well into business success and sort of dividends for a lifetime is the ability to continue to try in the midst of failure. Not a lot of people have that resiliency. And we've talked specifically about resiliency in business, Steve, but that ability to fail and say, "Oh, well, that one didn't work. Let's go at it again a different way." Sometimes it's very expensive, and sometimes it's exhausting, and sometimes it's emotionally draining, but you have to keep pushing, right?
Yeah.
Looking for small business consulting? Visit paradigmplaybook.com to book a session with us.
We can't do any topic without me bringing up a book, but the book Grit is exactly, who's the author of Grit?
I don't know, Niall.
And the point in Grit was of knowledge, skill, and performance, and grit. The most important is grit. So it's more important than how much you know about a topic, how hard you work at a topic, and how long it's how willing you are to keep your nose to the grindstone will determine your success. And developing grit is, I'm going to see if I say this without making, you can correct me on this. I think it's more difficult for successful people to have grit because you tend to try something, it doesn't work. This is what I saw in the corporate world. Yeah, we've tried that for 2 months and let's go. Where the unsuccessful person has been doing it for 2 years and it finally kicks in. So I think grit is the persistence to keep at something without having the quantifiable positive results.
The author is Angela Duckworth.
Of course it is. We all
you
knew
knew
that. Come on.
Well, I think there's another point. Somewhere early in my career, I think Matt said this to me. He said, I know I'll be successful in financial services because I'll outlast everyone. And when you think about that in terms of grit, right? You stay in a business long enough, you push through the hard times, you continue to try and continue to try. Eventually, you're the most experienced guy on the block, right? And you've been through the ups and downs of the market. You've been through all that stuff. So there is this persistency and this grit necessary to fail and get back up. And I'll tell you, while from the onlooker's perspective, I have a very successful business, it isn't without its multitude of failures along the way, and its multitude of bad decisions and learning opportunities, as we like to call them, right?
Yeah, it's the old swan analogy or duck. It's like, it looks beautiful scooting along the pond and no one sees the pedaling of the feet underneath the water.
Yeah.
And that's the grit that it takes to keep the duck sailing smoothly across the top of the water.
Yeah.
Not that you're a duck, Dave, but
yeah, well, hey, never let them see you sweat, right? There's another one here that is probably understated in all of business, which I think is the ability to master your thoughts. And again, probably about 3 or 4 years into my first business, I had a mentor or a business coach who sat me down and said, listen, are you taking time to think? Do you have a think spot? Like, do you have somewhere you go and you think? Now, some people call it meditation. Some people call it like learning or whatever. For me, I absolutely have to take time and with no distractions and think. Usually my thinking involves a pad and a pen. Well, in this day and age, it's remarkable. But you have to be able to sort through your thoughts and master your sort of mindset, and to be able to take the time to think through logical progressions to be able to communicate it well, right? You can't communicate things that you haven't thought about effectively.
I have a recent experience that has taught me that. And that's, as many people have heard me talk about, I sat down to write a book, and not as easy as I thought it would be. I have all this stuff in my head, but to get it organized and thoughtful. So to do it, I had to, take big time blocks out of my schedule to sit down. And for me, I had to block out everything else. Doors closed, no cell phone, no email, there's nothing going on, me and a blank screen. And it works because it's amazing how deep your mind will go if you give it the space to really dig in there. So I think it's a great thing. And maybe it's one of the reasons why we see business owners. I had one last week. We were sitting there and they're so frazzled. And they say, they have a waiting list. We can't reach max capacity. We can't do all this thing. I said, wait, slow down. Let's back off. how many kids coming in? You know, so we walk through the whole process and they go, wow, that was so easy. But they had never backed off, taken the time to think. So let me ask you this. So for you, are we talking a habit of daily, I'll call it thinking or meditation, whatever you want to call it. But is that a daily habit, a weekly, whenever you feel like it? Or
So I have 3 things that I do that are daily. And then I have my big, like, working on it. I call it the working on it room. That's a giant room, Steve, because I'm working on a lot of things.
Okay.
And so
is that a room up here or out here?
it's a mental room, but it's also a physical space.
Okay.
At my house, I have a wingback recliner chair that also doubles as a study reading chair and all that, in my basement, in my office. But I also do, as you know, I do a lot of thought conditioning, right?
Mhm.
So a thought conditioner is just a way to sort of put yourself on track it's my version of relentless solution focus, which if you've not read RSF, I can't go an episode without bringing it up. It is probably one of the most influential things out there. Dr. Jason Selk basically said, you got a minute to lament the problem and then move one step in a direction of solution. And so for me, the thought conditioners are, whether I'm finding them online, whether I'm finding them in Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, or whether I'm reading a book, or whether I'm looking at, I have a folder that has 10 years of thought conditioners in it, of things that are inspirational or motivational, things like that.
I know you've been sending them to me. I'm good.
Again, whether it's like how to run a business meeting or how to do that, little incremental improvements in my knowledge base of what I'm dealing with is motivation. So the improvement and the progress motivates me to do more and more. So I spend every day at least 15 minutes getting a good grip on, doing something better. Right. And that requires thought. Okay, I do it this way. What is there a better way? First of all, you have to doubt, or you have to be skeptical of the way you do things. Constant skepticism in my world. Is this the best outcome? Is this the best way to do it? Are we serving the right person? Whatever it may be. And then I always have a book in process, right? I'm rereading the Unreasonable Hospitality again.
Wow. Hey, I was just going to bring that up. So, I'd like to hear from the audience on this one. How many make a habit of rereading a book? Or I make a habit of reading and then listening, or listening and then reading. And I will also say I probably start a good share of books that I don't finish. I don't feel obligated to finish them. If they don't catch me in the first few chapters, they're not going to get me. So, but the ones that are good, Unreasonable Hospitality, for those that have not read that, is basically about customer service. It's about your business. It's about our business, everybody's business. You can't escape it. And the detail in which they go is unbelievable.
It is. So I'm rereading that one to figure out where, and so the first time I read the book is to get the concept and to really understand it, right? The second time I read,
that one's fun.
Well, yeah,
it's just
correct.
fun.
It's a good story. It's a feel good. It's good across the board. It's got good anecdotes in it and things like that. So, but the second time I read it is for application. That's okay. I read this and I'll show a book sometime. This is Marketing by Seth Godin. Yeah. I have dog-eared pages, probably 40 dog-eared pages with underlined stuff to go back and then like start applying the knowledge and the use in that when I go through it the second time. So usually I like to do the same thing I do when I write, Steve. If I write something, I write it and then I sleep on it and then I read it and then I probably edit it. And then I may, depending on how valuable or important of a document it is, I'll do that process until I find that I've got everything I want. So in the reading process, when I take someone's initial words and process them, I don't spiral into a got to do this right now. I go, okay, there's good stuff in there. I got to connect the dots on this. I'm going to come back to it. So I'll put it down for a week and I'll go back to it.
Okay. So this is all coming under the topic of the think room. Or
got it. So I've and then the working on it room. Once I go from read knowledge or inspiration, I then apply it to the project, and that's where I go in the working on it room. And now I'm actually working on, the application of the knowledge gained or the system interrupt or the pattern interrupt that happened in my brain that said, hey, I'm not doing this right. I need to do it a different way. This is the way I want to do it. We're going to go there. The same thing I did with EOS, right?
So and I think that the key is having this analytical approach to pretty much everything you do, with always thinking, is there a better way of doing this? Is there a more efficient way of doing this? Is there a way that I cannot do this? And, so all those questions. So I don't know if that all comes up when you're kind of by yourself thinking, or it comes up in a crowd, or
weird times it comes up. I can tell you that. Weird times.
I have some people have, tell me, I woke up in the middle of the night, I thought of a great idea and I didn't write it down, so I don't know. Some people have a pad by their bed, they write things down. I can tell you, I never come up with a good idea when I'm sleeping, other than I should be sleeping more. But my thing is, when I'm exercising, I feel like I come up with the best ideas. If I'm on a treadmill or on a walking path, I come up with more ideas when I'm walking the dog than anything else. And the darn dog doesn't remember a darn thing. So he's no help at all. But so I think you all have your space for thinking, but then it's internalizing your own thoughts, because everybody's smarter than they think.
Yeah. I mean, I had one, I sat up in bed one day, Steve. This is at 23:47, so 11:47 p.m. I wrote this note on August 31st of 2023. I said, I have a mission. My mission is to enrich the lives of those around me. I'm going to revolutionize college admissions, educate advisors and consumers on sound financial advice, and build a talented group of successful planners to spread the model. I'm going to enjoy the success of I'm going to enjoy the success of my parenting, retire with enough to afford a venture with my bride, support launch and 3 generations of Kozaks. And how I'm going to do this, I'll be disciplined in my preparation for all things. I will say no to distractions. I'll follow through. I'll admit, but no longer accept failures and weakness. I will take conscious action to eliminate weakness and failure, and I will lead. And that note was...
Hey, wait. Now, time out. You wrote this in the middle of the night?
I wrote that at 11:47.
Okay, I can't do that. You know what I come up with at 11:47? That's it.
Listen,
okay, so that's the point of this whole thing. Everybody's got their own time and space, but you have to listen to yourself, and you have to record it. Let's get one more skill here, because I want to hit on one skill before we get... And that skill that I told you I wanted to start with is the skill of sales. And I am so adamant, and in the book I give probably way too much space to this topic, and in my life I give, but I feel it's the most important skill that will determine the success of everything. It's your life, your business, your relationships. And all the people that say they don't want to be salespeople. I spoke at the local college. I had 200 entrepreneurial students. And I say, okay, how many are going to business? All the hands are up. How many want to go into the business of sales? 0 hands out of 200. And I say, you realize the salespeople make the most money? And they all, yeah. Now, how many want to be in sales? Still nobody wants to do it. Okay, but if you do this, and I've done this question before, and how many have ever had a job in sales and they still don't claim to it? I said, okay, guys, how many of you are married? And the hands go up. I said, okay, so you were selling at some point. I can tell by looking at you that took a sale. So the point is, selling is a skill that's important, not just like if you're working retail, but if you're in a service business that has to convince an athlete to do this exercise, that's a sale.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to convince a parent that the child should be here for an hour and a half instead of an hour, that's a sale. If you have to convince the person they should be exercising at home, if your trainer has to convince you that you should add, added core training, that's a sale. It's everything's a sale where you're transferring something to someone else. The thing I always fall back to is I believe so much in what I believe in that I never feel guilty about selling. And I think that's why people avoid selling, is because, well, I'm trying to steal their money. And I feel no matter what they pay me for it, they won. That's how I look at it. So to me, sales isn't something that you should have to just accept. It's something you should cherish. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the ability to sell and negotiate is huge. The ability to speak one-to-one and in large groups is huge. There's a confidence necessary to sell, Steve, and that's what people fail. Nobody wants to claim that they're a salesman for whatever reason, but the salespeople are the ones that make the world go round. I don't care if you've got the best widget on the market.
But some of those great salespeople are introverts.
Yep.
So it's not just, the crazy.
Oh, correct. 100%.
Yeah. So, and you can be a slow, thoughtful, kind of Bill Gates type of, or you can be an outgoing and effervescent Steve Jobs, or, so you can be any type you want. I mean, look at Warren Buffett is an introvert's introvert, and he's convinced more people to invest in him than anyone else. So it's not linked to a specific personality.
No,
but it's important in everyone. It's a skill you need to have.
Well, there's a good book on that. We'll end on this one. Oren Clamp wrote a book called Frame Control.
Okay.
I think it's Frame Control. No, or that's the subject matter. I'm not even getting the book right. What's that book called, Niall? Oren Clamp. Klaf. Claff.
I'm drawing a blank. Or maybe I haven't read it.
It's one you should read. He's coming with it.
Okay, another skill you should have is being able to Google.
Pitch anything.
Pitch anything.
Yes, okay.
Pitch anything.
I have read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a good one to understand frame control and all that.
Hey, so before we sign off, a topic for a future time, and I'm just working with clients now putting pitch decks together. So whether it's expansion, fundraising, launch, all those things, the ability to put together a pitch deck. And I think too many people that are in the sports world don't put the time into it. It's not that hard to put a pitch deck together. So I think we could do a good segment on how to put together a pitch deck.
All right.
So
good
we'll
deal.
do that. One other thing, before you sign off, the inspiration for what Dave and I were talking about today is, I don't know where it came from, but Dave sent it to me this week. The 21 skills that will pay you forever. Anybody that wants a copy of this, shoot us a text or email, or, go to Paradigm Playbook, send us a message. We'll send this over to you. It's kind of a fun way to look at it and yourself. So thank you.
All right, everybody. That's been Paradigm Playbook, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Make it a great day.
Do you want your business to thrive? Visit us at paradigmplaybook.com and contact us today for expert assistance.